Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. I have on with me Jason Flack. Jason is a good friend of mine who is head of partnerships at Steady, and he's going to talk to us about building, partnerships, whether you're an individual or a brand. Before I turn it over to Jason, just to give you guys some background for those who haven't attended, one of our live webinars before. My name's Ari, and I help brands and people with content strategy, personal branding. So I'll turn it over to you, Jason, and
Yeah.
really excited for you to join us today and talk about your background and all the amazing things you've learned from building partnerships over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. Ari, thanks for having me on. I've been excited to do this when you originally told me about it. So appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your followers here. So a little bit about me. I originally am from the DC area and attended undergrad at University of Southern California and brought me out to sunny LA, where I've been for the past 10 years. I started in finance. I was a analyst at a bank, focusing on venture debt, and eventually switched over to the partnership side, and recently left. I left the bank and joined a family office where I was under the tutelage of Randy Kaplan, who is a co-founder of Akamai Technologies, and he really taught me the roots of BD and really founding partnerships and establishing strong, long-lasting partnerships. I spent about a year and a half there, and I recently accepted the role at Steady, where I've come on as director of partnerships, and am helping them build out a growth partnership platform where we can help our partners push Steady to their users to have Steady become a source for their users to make additional income. It might make more sense if I talk a little bit about the company that I'm working with, give a little bit more insight to the kind of partnerships that we're doing or that I'm currently working on.
Yeah, I would love to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So Steady is the leading income booster in America. So we focus on delivering hourly, contract, part-time, and work from home job opportunities to lower to middle income Americans. Obviously, right now we are in high demand, as we've seen unemployment skyrocket to nearly 30 million Americans. And so there are a number of financial institutions, fintech players right now that are worried about their users defaulting on their debts, right? People are laid off from their jobs and they don't have income coming in. So Steady, being that we focus on providing these job opportunities for Americans, we will work with our partners to push Steady to their user bases. So companies like ARP, Stash, Capital One, Varo, Chime, some of these fintech players to help them and their users stay financially healthy and survive during these very difficult times.
Yeah, no, that's really great. So I think, I wrote a few things that I wanted to talk to you about today.
Sure.
First is, when you think about brand building for companies, one of the people I had on a guest a few weeks ago talked a lot about building networks and building, valuable relationships with people. How do you go about making sure that, you've chosen the right partner, turning it into a long-lasting relationship? What are the things you look for? How do you start building that relationship? How do you identify the right partners? For folks like you guys, you're working with tons of people. And
Mhm.
for those of you who don't know this, Shaquille O'Neal is one of their spokesmen. So
Right.
they get a lot of attention and a lot of, um, big names. And I know this was before your time, but even choosing Shaq to work with him, like, how do you guys go about thinking about, okay, we want Shaquille O'Neal as our partner in helping market the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of Shaq, that's a specific one. Shaq actually, the reason why Steady is such a good fit for him as a partner is because he resonated with the message that Steady has to offer. He grew up in a home where his mom and father were working job to job, and were just trying to pay the bills. They were just paycheck to paycheck to support him as a budding all-star basketball player who was the size of two human beings, right? And so that means double the food, right? And they struggled, and he saw that struggle. And when he learned of Steady, I think he discovered us at I think the Money conference in 2017. The story resonated with him, and we hadn't worked with him as a partner up until that point, but um, the value share was what really made the partnership work, and that's why Shaq was so eager to become the face of our company. He's our chief income advocate, and he's now even an investor in the company. Besides being a brand partner, and again, I think the reason it works is because of there's a shared value system there.
And I really like that. And I talk a lot, and we've had, our previous guests talk a lot about the power of nostalgia, and that, on the one hand, you could talk about adding immediate value. And for him, it's, obviously making money from your brand, but at the same time, there's a personal connection. And for you guys, it helps build your audience. But that personal connection and really digging deeper into it, that he has something that's, more important than that monetary aspect. It's that he really resonates with the brand. How do we go about replicating that when people are thinking about, making those connections, that power of nostalgia?
Hmm. So, question is, what? How do
I
you?
get, yeah. So I guess, to dive deeper into that, making those deeper connections, right? So it's not just about those superficial, here's what I put on a piece of paper, right? Here's the deal terms of, we give you X, you give us Y, but also something deeper than that, and building that relationship. And sometimes, it's a personal thing, right? It's, oh, the CEO of that company and this CEO, we both grew up in the same town, or, our friends went to
Yeah,
the same temple or church,
right,
that, previous history that you can't just, you know, calculate out of thin air, right?
right.
It's something that's deeper than what can be put on a term sheet.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's my real view on partnerships from the beginning. I mean, I think finding commonality is where you find true partnerships. The foundation of partnerships begin. So for me, whenever I enter into a conversation with anyone, but specifically, when we're on the precipice of a partnership, I want to learn a little bit about someone, right? So, I might do some research on this person before, entering into the conversation, and just, establishing our commonalities, right? Where are we in common, and what can we bond over? And once you have that bonding, I think that it makes, one, the conversation that much more engaging, but two, there's the ability to really relate on another level. In terms of finding someone for a specific partnership, on that relationship level, those things come through conversation. They come through relationships. They can start very small and start in a I have one story of, like, when I was working at the family office I was a part of. I was leading BD for one of their portfolio companies, and the company it's called Collar Card. It's like it's literally a piece of plastic that you wouldn't look twice at, but it's huge for its industry. And so, for me, I wanted to, this was a real opportunity for me to learn the ropes of BD and really get some tutelage from my mentor. So, we were working with dry cleaners and, just not necessarily the clientele that you get excited to get out of bed for. But, for me, I wanted to do a good job. So I would start at the most basic level for our partnerships. I would literally go to local trade show events or local meetups and see who's in the area, who I can start found a relationship with. And little did I know, one of these trade shows, I ended up, or not trade shows, but a meetup with, 20 people in the room. I ended up speaking with someone who, his family had been in the industry for years, and we end up having a conversation. We say, well, we'll talk offline, later, a week later, we have a call, and we start, our conversation lasts an hour. And I am, we clearly had bonded over something. And he says, are you guys going to the Queen show? And, I'm new at this job. First time in the industry. I said, no, what's the Queen show? It turns out it's the biggest event of the year for the dry cleaning industry, and an industry that that we had been trying to get into for years. The business was a 10-year-old business before I got there. And we, he ends up inviting me to come along with him, with his company, and just be a spokesman of my own company, but a part of his team, which what otherwise would have cost us $5,000, which we would have never spent our money on. And we ended up at that show, landed the largest account that the company has ever seen in cleaner supply, which is the Amazon of the dry cleaning industry. Again, as I learned, but partnerships, they can start as small as a conversation and they can develop into a real bond, and who knows where they develop from there. And so that I think that's some of the things that I've started to learn that are most effective about partnerships. You really just don't know where they're going to start, but you got to start with some commonality, and it can develop into a real, bloom into something big.
So, I guess to touch on that, one of the things that was really interesting about that is, you got a lot of value out of that relationship. But how do you make sure, you're adding value to, his relationship? Maybe he wasn't looking for that, right? Maybe he remembered when he was entering the industry and wanted to help out. I do think in the long run, there's just, if you can figure out how to create those mutually beneficial relationships, that's really where, the success starts to come in. So how do you guys make sure that you're on the same page and that your expectations around, this is what I want from this is what, you want from this, and yeah, love to, hear you talk about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What I try to avoid is a transactional relationship. Like I tried, you want it to be deeper than, look, you do this for me, I'll do that for you. I do try and merge, business with friendship. And I try to, I like, if I could go out for a beer with the partner, I'd love to do that. Right. But at the end of the day, it is business. So you do have to deliver on your end and not just be friend to friend. So specifically for that example, for this guy, he now has collar cars. His business has collar cars for the rest of his life. And I think extreme, like 75% discount, right? For the rest of whenever they order. So, but in terms of the long-term value that we saw out of it, just by offering a 75% lifetime discount, we got one of the largest partnerships ever in company history. Also met, besides that partnership, we also met and made sales to, I think, like at least we established at least 80 different hot leads from that 3-day event. So the give and take there it was yes, we did give a little bit, and you always have to give a little bit in order to make the partnership really derive value. But as long as you're giving and you see and you're taking as well, and you can see that on the opposite side, it's important to have both for sure.
Yeah, and I think definitely a lot there in terms of, making sure there's that give and take.
Mhm.
But it's great that, you make that connection, and then he's a partner for life. I think, a lot of people talk about trade shows, and meeting in person. Right now we can't do that. And a lot of my focus in writing is around content strategy. So helping, companies, people think about how they can use content,
Mhm.
to build on these types of relationships. So what has worked for you guys both at Steady and in the past with other things, in content, and help in terms of, building these partnerships, making connections, and
Yeah,
I think scaling that.
absolutely. I think so. Right now at Steady, we're doing some pretty amazing things. Not to toot our own horn, but we're really trying to help as many people as possible during this difficult time, because we're fortunately in a position to do so. So, one thing that we recently released was the Steady Together initiative, where we're actually, among other things, we're giving away $1,000 grants to Steady users who we've established have had their income decreased as a result of COVID-19, right? And we've given away over 1.3 million today, and we plan to give away a lot more. And we're also giving away free telehealth and telemedicine, and these are big noteworthy things, right? So one thing that we can do, because we're not in front of people's faces right now, one thing that we're really focusing on is trying to get press around these pieces and let people know this is legitimate. Because when people see, oh, here's free money, your first doubt is, your first thing is, this can't be real. This is too good to be true, right? So, we're focusing on press, and we've had a couple articles written up by Fast Company and Mashable, and we're trying to get more. Um, but sort of just trying to let people get this accredited, and let people know that uh, this is a legitimate um, thing that we're doing. And so once you get that press, you can start circulating that to either to your current partners, right, and let them know, and then then you're top of mind on their head. They're like, oh wow, look at the stuff that SETI is doing, how cool, and you're front of mind. But also the potential partners who are in the pipeline that haven't necessarily closed on a deal yet, or you've been talking to, and sort of just they've got their own priorities. All of a sudden, look at the press piece that Steady has gotten, and look at the cool things they're doing, and now you're top of mind again. And then you can do that all digitally, right?
Yeah, and I think that top of mind, and I talk a lot about mind share awareness, in that it's just making sure you're constantly resonating with, the customer, or the potential employee, or whatever stakeholder that is. And it doesn't matter what that channel looks like. It could be something as simple as a tweet, all the way to something like, press releases, or articles. But I guess before I expanded that, I had a question from the chat.
Yeah,
What does that grant look like? Like, how do you guys, how are you eligible for it? Just, the details around that.
a great question. So one of the things that we encourage for our users to link up their bank account, because we have incredible tools that we've built out to help them guide them in the direction of finding more income based on their past experience, based on their geography, based on a number of different factors. So we actually use historical income data to determine what your historical average income was, right? So we can, so we will see that a regular deposit was made by, let's say, DoorDash from the past 6 months, and then let's say Uber, because obviously everyone knows Uber's transportation has cut down by 80% recently. All of a sudden, that income has either disappeared or has dramatically decreased. So we'll take April's income or March's income and compare it to your historical averages across, let's say, November, December, and January 2020. And if that income has decreased by what we rate as 50%, minimum of 50%, and you have had a minimum of $1,000 in average income per month, then you fall into a category of people that need assistance from Steady, and from other entities such as the government.
Got it. And yeah, thank you for explaining that. So touching back on what we were talking about before with Mindshare and top of mind, I guess how do you break it up into, okay, you guys sent out a press release, um, or you get that news article, what does that process, really digging into the specifics look like of, say there's a lead or you're close to converting them or there's someone you want to do business with. Is that I'm going to email this person this article. Are they on a mailing list? Are they on a mailing list? And then you follow up individually. And, what do those funnels look like for you of, going from initial meeting to, signing that deal?
So what does the process look like from a deal perspective in terms of stages?
Yeah, correct. The stages and sort of, those, as you said, top of mind share of making sure that it doesn't die. Because I think a lot of people, and this is not just with this, but in general, they're like, oh, let's do business together. Let's make an investment. Let's do whatever. And it just dies out. We get busy. We're focusing on other things. And I think, persistence is the key, not just with this, but in life, of making sure like, okay, I have this written down. I say I'm going to do this deal, and then like I just got to follow up. And and grinding that
Yep.
through.
Yep. No, 100%. I do think it depends on the industry, and it depends completely on the product. Um, you know, specifically for within fintech, right? Like, so there's one principle that's consistent across. I mean, you're spot on that that persistence is the key to landing a deal, because unless the client, and it happens very frequently, unless the partner is, you know, full go, like let's partner right now, which is 99.9% of the time not the case, because they've got their own initiatives that they're worried about, and they've got a product team, or they've got other finance issues going, whatever it may be. I mean, there's so many things going on at a company, whether it be small or large, that your partnership may not be top of mind. So you have to give that person the respect and the distance to be not necessarily a gnat in their ear, but sort of every now and then, if you're not hearing back from them on a frequent basis, just checking in, set a reminder for yourself. For like, I use Superhuman, but on Gmail you can set reminders for an
Oh,
email.
can you explain to people what Superhuman is? You're in LA, and I think a lot of people in the regular world don't know what Superhuman is. It's the same with Clubhouse. Everyone on Twitter is like, oh, Clubhouse is the new thing.
I just
And I think
learned Clubhouse.
99.9%.
Are
Yeah,
you?
I'm not. Clubhouse is this app that everyone on fintech or VC Twitter is talking about. It's like the newest social network. I still have not got invited to it. I don't know what it is, but
One day.
all the cool kids are in it. So
Right.
Superhuman is the email version of that. I like the joke, except I don't think it's invite only anymore. So it's not as cool as these.
It is still invite only. So I got you.
I'm wrong. I'm wrong.
No, but it's like, it's basically like they call it like a high-end email client. So they were tired of Gmail sort of being all cluttered in the UI and UX from Gmail and some of these other email clients. So Superhuman's a highly priced, still debating if it's worth the price, to be honest with you, but email client that makes email pretty easy, especially for people that are focused on partnerships. I mean, you can tell when people have read their email or not, how many times they've read it, what location they're reading it from. You can set reminders for yourself. You can see bios on people's email addresses. It's really cool. Highly suggest people checking it out if they can.
And it's so funny, not to digress, but I think about the evolution of communication, and especially during, what's going on now. I was on a call before this with all these people who are like in their service providers, very, very traditional service providers. Like, yeah, I just made my first deal ever where I never met the client before or even did a video chat. They got an endorsement, and that was like new to them. And it's
wow.
That's nuts to me. And I'm sure to you as well, being in, we do internet businesses at the end of the day, where that's how sales and revenue are generated. And I think it's funny how, we talk about all these new tools, but if you think about how still a lot of the world gets deals done, it's still through very traditional methods. It's things such as, email, it's phone calls, it's meeting in person. And for all the talk about how great of a productivity tool Slack is, or name that tool, like,
Yeah.
they're not that great. The only way they're great is if the company's using them correctly, or if the people are using them correctly, and most people aren't. So it's, and I guess also to turn that into a question, and but maybe I'll let you finish your point first. Is that, you know, for all the talk around like all these amazing communication tools, do you think email and like doing a phone call, being in person, like, is that really the way to go? I've been growing my Twitter presence, as you know, and everyone should follow me on Twitter at amlewis4. But um, you know, is DMs, like, is that something that's success for you? Is,
Yeah. It's a great question.
talk about that? Yeah.
Yeah. So first off, can verify, worth a good follow. If you want to follow someone good, follow Ari.
Follow Jason too. What is your Twitter?
Flack thought. That's my
Got
last name and then thought. Because you never know what's going on up here. So I personally, I think this is a good question for what's going on right now with COVID-19, because there is no human to human, face-to-face contact. I mean, our CEO, I think, just mentioned that we're indefinite, along with a lot of other tech companies. We're indefinite work from home for the rest of the year. Which, like, usually, when you land a big partnership, you might fly out to that person's company and shake hands with the person. Like, that's the typical way of going about a partnership, but that doesn't happen anymore. And so I would say that there's nothing face-to-face contact. Like, there will always need to be face-to-face contact, face-to-face, conversation, for a deal to go through, for a big deal, maybe not a small deal, but any kind of big partnership. But that face-to-face conversation can now happen over Zoom. So I really do think that Zoom, or Google Hangouts, whatever it is, has replaced and will replace, as we continue to ride out the changes that will happen as a result of COVID-19. That won't change. I think email, LinkedIn Premium, some of these other tools, they are tools to get you in the door, but you can't make a deal over email. You can't make a deal over LinkedIn messaging or Instagram DMing. You might be able to present terms, but if it's any real deal, I mean, it's going to happen either on the phone or face to face or over Zoom.
Do you see, in this whatever post COVID-19 world, that a lot of, this deal making, these collaborations, partnerships, whatever you want to call them, are going to go the way of, oh, I don't have to get onto a plane anymore, right? I don't have to, we're in a cut back on airfare. Do you start seeing that happen? And one of the things that I talk about a lot, and where I push a lot of, whether it's clients or people I'm writing to, is that, scale via content, and scale via, scalable channels as well. Right. While I do think meeting in person is great, I think, going to trade shows, it's great. It's not scalable, right? It's, unless you can clone yourself, you can't scale your time. So, do you think that this evolution is going to occur where, people aren't going to have to travel as much? Trade shows, maybe they're virtual, or, we have VR trade shows. I don't know if we're close to that yet, where, you could put on an Oculus headset and walk around a virtual trade room. But do you see that happening where, you're not going to have to travel anymore? You could just, do the whole deal over phone call and Zoom, and bam, it's done.
Yeah, I mean, if I had that answer, I'd be worth a lot of money, or I will be worth a lot of money. But if I had to make my best guess, I would say that yes, we will develop into a world where those kind of things are happening. I think COVID-19 has accelerated the virtual digital revolution that's set to take place in humanity, over, not to get too existential, but in the next 20, 30, 40 years. And I do think that VR and digital are going to be places where uh, partnerships take place. I mean, I think partnerships are you're already seeing um, you know in terms of digital partnerships. I mean, are we talking about just the actual deal making, like the actual partnership?
Yeah, so I think, I'm talking about things like partnering with an influencer like Shaq to
Right,
signing on to, doing some type of revenue share to two brands announcing they're doing a joint collaboration together.
right,
All those different types of collaborations, and I meant, and this is a bit off topic, but obviously I follow the influencer space a lot with a lot of these vloggers, and it's been interesting where you know they're not collaborating as much because they can't do a vlog together, but now they're doing like Instagram TV live's a big thing where they're both going live on Instagram. So that's sort of
we
their
did we did
their
the same
version of
thing with
that.
Shaq. That's what we did with Shaq, actually, to announce Stay Together. We did a live stream where Shaq has his 16.5 million followers versus Steady, who has their 5,000 followers. Uh, that when he goes live, all of a sudden it says Shaq has gone live with Steady, and our CEO Adam Roseman joined him on there for like a 10-minute uh, uh, call, which you can actually see on YouTube if you want to go watch that. Um, but yeah, I mean, I do believe that a lot of those partnerships will take place over digital and over a digital platform for sure.
And I think IGTV, just as a good example, is great because it also allows people to use their time more efficiently, right? Like I have a friend who lives in Livingston, New Jersey, and they were doing like a fundraiser for coronavirus. And I guess Jason Alexander, who plays George from Seinfeld,
Yeah.
was in it. And he was on the Zoom call for 10 minutes and they raised $25,000 from that. But like, he might not be able to make it in a physical world. So the question is like, oh, are people going to be comfortable where, now the person can Instagram live in, and it's funny, this term in the marketing psychology industry is called parasocial interactions, where like people think that they're building these relationships with like these influencers via like video chats and YouTube and whatever medium forms of entertainment, because they think they know them from like this conversation, right? Like someone watching this might be like, oh, I really know Jason or I really know Ari, even though we're talking and we've never interacted with them before. So it'll be curious to see like, oh, is that's what's going to happen with what um, these influencers are doing, where they're going to be doing more of that, and more people are going to start adopting that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But I think as we wrap things up over the next 5 to 10 minutes, if anyone has any questions in the chat, feel free to ask. But I think so looking at the chat now, actually, we have a question. So can you talk a bit about you talked about working with Randy at the family office, but before that, what resources, I know you were in investment banking, did you learn to network with people, to find good partners? How did you develop that? Were there any resources, but besides obviously learning on the job, that were really helpful?
Yeah. So, quick correction: I was actually in venture banking, not investment banking.
Oh,
But
my apologies. I knew you were at Square. I thought it was always investment banking, venture banking. Got it.
no worries. So, question was, what were some of the? Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. So the question was, what were some of the ways you learned on the job besides actually like learning through experience? Like, were there any books, people,
Yeah.
articles?
Yeah. So, first off, I would say there's nothing like being thrown in the fire. You quickly learn as much as possible, and you do your best not to make any mistakes. But like, for example, with Steady, I joined the company right as we went remote, in the middle of a fundraise, and an unseen amount of demand for the platform, where we had partners reaching out to us saying we need Steady to boost, to push to our users, right? I barely knew, X from Y, right from left, and yet I was leading these conversations. And now, 2 months in, I can tell you so much and answer any question about the company that otherwise may have taken me, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months just to even, get to the point where I am right now. So I do think that just being thrown in the fire and just doing is a phenomenal way to do it. Finding a mentor, I think, is really good. Working with Randy at my last firm, he was a huge influence on me, and he's been very successful in his own right. And so being able to learn some of the tools and techniques from someone who's been successful in the field that you're interested in, you learning from those who have done it right and or been successful is also a quick way to expedite your own learnings, right? And there are a number of podcasts and books out there that I've read over the past year and a half, 2 years. Obviously are escaping me at the moment, but because my recall is not always the best. But I picked up tidbits here and there that have been very helpful and that have stuck with me for sure.
So, we have time for 2 more questions. So I have one, and then I'll go to the chat for this one before I ask mine. So how do you know, identifying the right people to work with, not just companies, but literally people, and saying like, oh, this is a good person. I really like their values, their motivations, both from, building a partner relationship, but maybe a mentor relationship as well. What have you found are characteristics that signal, oh, this is a good person?
I think it's honestly, there's a few things that stick out to me. Empathy is one. Just being able to be, socially aware is another. Everyone has a lot going on. Everyone wants to partner and move quickly and get everything right for their organization or themselves. But at the end of the day, there's multiple people at the table besides yourself. And I strive for long-term relationships. Like when I do business with someone, I want to do business with that person, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, 30 years down the line. Those are the kind of relationships that I strive for. And those are the kind of people that I like to work with. So, I prefer to I look for people that are not out for the short term, but are more interested in the long term. I think you're able to sort that out very quickly by the way someone approaches a deal. And if they're looking for terms that are entirely favorable to themselves, then this person is not someone I probably want to do business with again. But maybe you get the deal done just to get it done and get everyone a win, but to stay away or really only come to that person or company if you really need it.
Got it. And sort of a good question to end on that I wanted to ask you. So what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned that have helped really shape your career? I think that touches on a bit about choosing the right people. You mentioned things like empathy, but like what else? What were lessons you learned, mistakes as well that you've made, where you're like, maybe now telling a younger version of yourself, oh, I wouldn't have done that. Can you touch on those 2 things?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I don't view myself as an expert. I think I'm still learning. And that may hurt your chat and why you're having me on here, but at the same time, I think everyone should be still learning. Some are more experienced than others, but I do believe that you're always a student, no matter how old you are and how much experience you have. I think looking back, I probably, thought I knew more than I did. And that's led me into different corners of different, positions in my career that, maybe I would have done differently, but, here I am and, with a amazing company and doing amazing things and, talking to yourself, there's no real, nothing really I look back on that would be, negative from that perspective. Unless
Jason, thanks so much for joining us. As a reminder, this is going to be recorded on YouTube, so I'll post it there in the next hour or so. Next week, I'm going to have on Reagan Avon, who is the president and founder of Women in Analytics, which is one of the largest women's tech conferences in the United States, with about 6,000 members of her organization and about 2,000 people attending her conference each year. She's also a leading expert on data analytics. So she's going to be talking about how she built her brand and building up a conference from scratch. So thank you everyone again for attending, and I'll see you next week.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Ari.
No problem, Jason. Have a good one.
Take care.